You should
don't
do
need
a
to
color
be.
any. You should color any color you like.
Girl, I'm
I've just been
bored and
watching
just
too much.
doodling. Suggestions are welcome.
Now
I've watched
recording.
way too much. Oops. Did you want me to stream to Twitch? Thank you. Okay.
No, that's bad.
How am I doing? Oh, well, let me tell you after I get the stream up. So
Stimulus bill passed, as Ariel mentioned before we started going live. That's on you because it's all over my stuff. Well, at the moment, that's what it is. It might change into something else. This is kind of free-form drawing, so it's not like I have a plan. I'm just doing.
I was saying I've been watching.
Yeah.
You're making me laugh.
Except I don't fuck millions of people over.
Yep.
Oh.
Better than nothing, at least.
I think it was 85.
No, they lowered the cap.
They did?
Yeah, they lowered the cap. Yes, it was. It was it's 75,000 for individuals, 25 or what you said for couples, and yeah, that's what it is, and it cuts off directly now instead of having a it's scaled down. Yeah, it's scaled down now. Yep. Mansion. It's mansion and a couple and about. In fairness, it might just be political expedience because they are running on the deadline of this running out. Oh yeah, he's also partially responsible with the minimum wage, I believe.
Because fascist's gonna fascist? I don't know. Like, that's my answer.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Manchin's technically a Democrat and a centrist, so not so much fascist as much as a bureaucrat and a neolib. Bad man.
I don't understand. We had Ojeda on the show for episode 100. He's like the closest. He's getting out of West Virginia, going North Carolina. His airborne podcast is pretty cool. It's on YouTube, but he says like, oh no, like at least Manchin is the only Democrat in like West Virginia with like an entire state just chock full of Republicans. So he doesn't like not like Manchin, but at the same time, maybe he can like put some kind of pressure on him. I don't know. He has his phone number. It'll be interesting. Right. It's interesting. Maybe we get Ojeda on the 200th episode and just go all in on Manchin and what he. Like,
Or Jay's being biased.
Oh, yeah, that's gonna happen.
Hey, Dave Chappelle lives about 3 hours, less than 3 hours from me. He's about 2 hours away. I will go track him down.
Yeah, do it.
Give it a shot.
This is the problem. Oh, she jumped. No.
Come on to our random podcast.
Well, dear.
What is up, Yang Gang Round
I
Table?
hate
Wu-Tang.
my fingers.
But
Does anybody know whether? Okay, I'm looking at a tweet about the Biden's $1.9 trillion stimulus from Jeff Stein. He says Senate Dems pass it. Is that because they did it without the help of any Republicans? Or
Zero
Yes,
Republicans.
literally
Why
not
did they
a
say this?
single Republican signed
Zero?
on.
Zero.
Zero.
Wow.
Wow.
I just turned my mic on for the
Interesting.
YouTube, so sorry about that, YouTube.
So if we didn't get
everyone
Warnock and
everyone else was
Ossoff,
heard, just me. I was muted on
we'd
YouTube.
probably without Warnock and Ossoff, we'd probably all still we'd be in an even worse position than we are in now.
Maybe,
Oh, yeah,
maybe.
No,
So,
no, not maybe.
no,
Not maybe. The Democrats would not have been able to pass this. They would
Yeah,
not.
probably.
Yeah.
why not?
that's it. With a say
We
goodbye.
probably
to
would.
the-
It's true. It's true. We probably wouldn't have passed it. So that's
Yeah.
good. Small
Yeah.
They can
victories.
pass. So if they're able to pass this one, that means they're going
There's
to be able
still
to do a
there's
lot
still
of
a lot
other
of people who
stuff.
aren't getting it.
No. If they
Yeah.
pass this one, it does not mean they're going to do anything else. They had to do this because they needed our votes at the time. They do not have to do anything else because they don't need our votes for like 2 to 4 years. So they're not going to do fuck all, and we're going to die.
I am going to say that
What
they're
I mean
already
is-
talking about a fourth stimulus package, so it's not dead in the water yet. Just so you have
It's all
a,
talk.
just so you have
I,
a-
Yeah, action.
I'm a pessimist, though.
I know you're a pessimist. I know you're a pessimist, but they are talking about it already. So
That's
So
good. Talk is
yeah.
cheap. I hope so.
Oh.
You know what? I think I have to keep challenge. I don't know.
Okay, so what
Listen,
I was
unless-
talking
unless
about,
The
Brown-
minute I take it for granted, the minute people like me go, okay, they're gonna do it. They're gonna go like, oh, they stopped saying we're not gonna do it. Now we don't have to do it.
Unless Brian from Clear Value Text confirms it and says like, yeah, they just signed off it, then I'll believe it. But until then, it's just talks, rumors.
well, yeah,
Nothing
of
is
course.
not pen to paper.
pen to paper until it's pen to paper. I mean, we just got this stimulus check.
I know
done.
one thing. They
Heard about this.
better not take another break.
Oh, Izzy, they earned a
So-
vacation, don't you think? I'm pretty sure they feel they've earned a vacation. They're gonna take one.
They suck.
hold on now.
They're
Is
patting
it-
themselves in the back like already, just
Patient in prison.
automatic back patting, just rapid
So-
fire.
So $1,800 in total, if you guys think about it,
Mhm.
in stimulus, at least for me. But then now it's gonna be like 2,000, 3,000, I think, 200 in total after this one passes. So I mean,
Not over 9,000.
it's still, yeah, not that. That's if we had a
Go tell
UBI
Master
already
Roshi.
for life. But I mean, you guys, it's a big deal if because it's normalizing it with
Mhm.
each stimulus that gets passed.
Yeah, it
it
is.
like
It's true.
normalizes
That's a
UBI.
great point, Ariel. That's
So-
exactly it.
so it's
Also,
dumb.
So that's
We
why,
are
like,
going to
a
see-
fourth. I hope we do a fourth one. It's so important.
we are also
Right.
going to see some very upset people who were expecting to get stimulus checks who don't follow this.
Well,
Yep.
fire
Find
their
out.
asses up. What,
Yep.
I
Those
hope-
people who
I
make
hope-
$76,000 who were
Look,
gonna make it.
I'm
Yeah. and
hoping,
then-
I'm
then they don't get
hoping
one.
that all the people who did not qualify for this stimulus are all the people who defend the regular welfare system. That
Yeah,
that would
see-
be poetic justice, because that's it. And
Yeah.
then we say, oh, okay, like, did it suck not to
They're not
receive
going
this
to
one?
make the connection,
So-
though, is the tragic thing. They're not going to see, like, oh, that's what it's like
Well,
when it
we'll
happens
make
to
'em
me,
make
because
the
they just
connection.
don't see
We'll-
themselves
we'll-
that way.
we'll-
Then
we'll
please
have
do.
them
Make them make
the
the connection. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing, because it's like they're like, oh, why should they get it? And no, because if those people who aren't getting this one were against the UBI, I'm saying they get what they deserve. But we'll
I
see
saw
what
this. I saw this one. I think one of the most recent episodes from Yang Speaks about cryptocurrency, and they had this guy on, mentioning that we actually have had
I was just
UBI for
watching
quite
that.
some time, but we actually had
When
UBI for
this
quite
goes
some
to the
time,
rich,
but it
yeah.
but it wasn't for
for
the
the
people.
rich.
It was for the rich.
Yeah, I was watching
Yeah,
that this morning.
exactly. So it's
That's a
like
great that's like my favorite episode of Yang Speaks ever.
the
It's-
money's
I
not
just
going
watched it. It's
anywhere
Well,
to the
fresh.
people, and yet
that's it's
Mhm.
been UBI for the extremely well off ever since 08.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
all.
Yeah, the
let-
money's
let-
there.
let-
The
I'm sorry,
money's
let's let Izzy
there.
finish.
Right. Yeah.
No,
so-
I'm just saying
Yeah.
I'm just saying like, we have the resources, we have the money or whatever, but it's like we literally have bullies and crybabies who are leading everything and in charge of everything. Those who have corporate interests or whatever
Yeah.
don't care about the people, but they say they will in order to get brownie points. That's
Yeah.
why
Right.
they're about
That's
like
right.
all talk.
That's why I want to
know?
ask Joe
And the-
Manchin. Yeah. What's the advantage? Why? Again, why? Because my mic was muted at the beginning, so YouTube didn't hear me say this the first time. Everyone else, your mics were not muted, just mine. I want Joe Manchin to defend. If Joe, I wish I had him here to ask. What is the advantage of a hard cutoff over the roll off? Because people who got $80,000 were going to get a reduced check down to 75,000. People who earned $75,000 a year up to $80,000 were going to get a reduced check, and now it's a hard cutoff. So people who had $76,000 a year, and I know that's more than any of us make, but still, I have empathy for those people. They're not rich per se. A lot of them have no liquidity. They're taking care of people who are less fortunate than them, and that puts them in pretty much the same position. So these people were counting on this $1,400 check, and the compromise that Democrat Joe Manchin, Democrat, the party of the people, right? I don't know. Sorry. For
I don't know.
yeah, I don't know, right? That's what they say for the working class.
why
He
don't
insisted
we,
on this. He wanted the roll off changed to a hard cutoff.
You
He
see,
wanted,
th-
and
this
so
is-
so
this
what's the
is how it
advantage?
is.
Why? I want
Let
him
me-
to tell us why.
Look,
Why?
look,
Ariel,
We're gonna
why?
have to ask him.
What's the advantage of the roll off over the hard cutoff
They're gonna
if it's not
expect-
just political expediency?
They're gonna expect that we'll be happy and we'll say, oh well, these people who made over 75,000, they don't get it, so there's more for us. But we're not stupid, so we join forces with those people that didn't get it, instead of creating an us versus them mentality with those people who didn't get it. So we don't let these pricks on the top divide us like that. We see it as their injustice, because they're like, I heard that there's two kinds of people. Like the people that say, oh, I went through shit and I went through hell and my life sucked, so why doesn't yours? And there's the people who say, I went through shit, I went through hell, and my life sucked, so I'll make sure that doesn't happen again. So which ones are we? Because there's a lot of the former out there and not enough of the latter. And that's what they're
Yeah,
expecting.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So what I was
it's like a pissing contest for misery. It's like, come on.
Right. It's a race to the bottom for like misery, and you see this with
Yeah,
these
race to
stupid
the bottom.
politicians all the time.
God.
With these idiots who are all like, "Oh, we knew how it was to grow up when our lives were like crap and all of this stuff." It's like, you know what? Shut up, just right there, asshole. We don't want to get a sob story for you or hear about how much your life was crap before you became a politician. What are you doing to fix those things that made your life crap in the first place, instead of just talking about it? I just want to smack some of these people.
And these folks in power, these so-called leaders, they're using that to their advantage. They're using
Right.
vulnerability
No,
and using like our
it's
struggle,
up to us.
saying the right words and stuff, and it's like,
it's up to us not to get fooled by it. It's up to us not to buy these stories when Joe Biden says,
Yeah.
Like that's the thing. Oh, but like my kids, I know what it's like because my kids didn't have like healthcare either, or like my kids. Okay, well, wasn't that bad? So stop. You know, stupid.
So
Yeah.
what I was talking about earlier is actually the fact that since the Democrats were able to pass the stimulus without the help of Republicans, that means that they have the ability to sort of control what gets passed in the Senate from here on forward, which
Well,
is
if
really
Republicans don't
different
care,
from all the other. It's very different from the past situations, and so they
yeah.
have a chance to actually do things, and we know that they can. So if they don't do something now, we know who's responsible
Who's
for
it wrong?
that.
Well, if the
They can't just
Republicans
pass the
don't
buck
care,
anymore.
if the
Adult dependents are getting it now, so I guess that's a
if
win. I
look,
guess.
look, the
Here's
thing
what
is,
I want
if
to say
yeah,
something real
go
quick.
ahead.
I just want to say that this is their moment to win over people like Shale. This is their moment to actually secure the next few nominations. If they actually follow through and do something good for the American people, they will have it. And that's all it would take.
Well,
So let's hope.
I mean, yeah, the sad thing is the sad
Why would they do that,
sad
though?
thing is the sad thing is
Well,
like in actuality the Republicans don't care if their constituents just dropped dead.
And even
We
your
saw that in
Democrats.
Texas.
Yeah. Both Democrats and
Yeah.
Republicans don't care about their constituents.
Okay.
well, that's
depends
where
on-
I mean,
I
all the
hate
stuff that just happened in
turning.
Texas comes in. The fact that the Texas legislators and leaders are sitting there complaining about windmills and things like that after this big weather crisis we had, that just makes absolutely no sense to me, considering that they've had 19 years of Republican trifecta in our state. Trifecta meaning the governor and both houses of leadership, of the legislature are basically run by Republicans, and that's been for 19 years straight. So if there's anything that goes wrong in Texas right now, Republicans have to take responsibility for that here in Texas, right? Because Democrats have trouble moving their agendas forward. So anything that's been done in Texas has been done with the approval of Republicans.
Has the snow finally melted there?
The snow is
it melted
melted,
over
but
here.
we do have
It melted over here. It's
oh,
like
good.
30, 40
Did you-
over here.
It melted here.
Wow.
I don't know if you're...
Oh, okay. So at least there's that.
Izzy, where are you located again?
I'm on the south side of Chicago.
Hey,
Okay, and
Izzy.
it was super cold in Chicago.
Mhm.
But then I heard from Chicagoans that it was like just every other day, every other year for you.
Yeah,
Actually, we
got some
do
weird
still have
weather.
snow on the ground here in New York. I just looked out the window, and we got some snow. I forgot.
But I think like the good news is like if you think about it, if like Yang wins his mayoral race, he can put so much more pressure on the Democrat majority for so many more things.
Oh yes,
So,
absolutely. The big thing
right.
about the New York mayor position is how visible it is. Think
Yeah,
of any other
I know,
position
and
in the country. and
That's
think
right. I mean, I wish Moto were on this episode. Maybe he'll come on. Actually, I'll go tell him we're doing this thing. But
yeah.
we were agreeing that what's going to happen now that Yang is the front runner, because the DNC really holds a lot of power in New York City. It's a very strong power base for them. They're going to do everything they can to take him down, and they might. They are going to launch a concerted effort to remove his power base block by block, boost any potential, they're going to boost the second or third place candidate or fourth place. They're going to pick whoever is, most with their agenda, what they want to, and the most machine politics person who can win, they'll put all the money behind them, and they might take Yang down because money is very powerful.
Look, it's our job to expose them, and I think like the more they do it, the more they just like reveal their hand, and once Yang is already in, then all of their shitty behavior is going to be made public, and it'll just bring more people onto Yang's team.
I hope so, but I mean, is it going to be? It might not be enough.
Why?
I believe we have to. I believe we have to infiltrate Wall Street or the stock market again, because you saw how spazzed out these. I
think the answer really is to do something very dramatic, which is to take their precious little pieces of paper out of circulation.
Get them at the, get
And
them,
that's
hit 'em where it
part
hurts,
of what
which is their wallet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
right.
like that's the only way. And to do shit like the GameStop AMC stuff, which
Yep.
is
You
just
need money. Yeah.
pure lunacy.
Stop
Right.
spending
And
dollars,
people
start
are
spending
gonna lose
Ethereum
money
or
on it,
Bitcoin.
but it
look,
breaks them.
dude.
It breaks them.
We
the only
have to.
language they
Yeah.
listen to.
Oh, yeah.
We have to propagate the biggest like reverse engineering campaign against these people. We have to like use their own spells against them, like in Harry Potter. You know, we have to do everything that they do that bothers us, annoys us, and drives us nuts. We just reverse engineer it and just throw it back in their freaking faces. You know.
So
Well,
I
and I
was
think the other
interested in
answer
where.
is.
Oh,
Sorry, Faye.
go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I think the other answer is also to do exactly what we're doing here with the podcast and build our own fucking communities. And the Yang Gang has been doing that all along. I mean, when Eric came on and said, I got $10,000 twice,
And
two times over last year, from
to
people that had the money to invest in his future.
Is that Trump is becoming old news. So they can't use him as like an excuse anymore.
Oh, well, they'll find some new villain.
Well,
they'll invent
whatever.
some
Trump's
new
not
villain.
the issue. Trump was never the
But
issue.
I do have
He's
something
the fucking
productive
puppet.
and positive to say. To the end of creating communities, I would like to invite you all to schedule your own events in this virtual space. You don't need my permission. Just go to the schedule channel, and if you would like to schedule a meet, a conference, or whatever here, please have it here. It's better than a Zoom because of the permanence of this address and because of the spontaneity of the people who might arrive not knowing that your event is happening. So please, anyone, start scheduling events here. That's a great way to grow this community.
Okay, Faye wanted to say something, but you want to say? Oh, go ahead.
Well, one thing I wanted to mention is I do hear an echo, and I want to see.
Oh, that's
if
on
anybody,
Lucas. Lucas, I muted you for a minute, and I forgot to tell you when I unmuted you. You have to turn on external noise suppression if you're going to use external monitors, and I would suggest turning on external noise suppression in the Discord settings, and then also using headphones anyway. So just that would be the best. Thank you. Logistics.
We would like to have our listeners actually be able to hear what is being said.
We're very
no
punk
problem.
rock.
And I was actually really interested in where is Lucas located, because Lucas is someone new to me.
Well, not far from me.
I think he implied that he was from Chicago as well, because I think I overheard him saying my name or whatever silently. So
that was me. Izzy.
Oh. No, wait, Lucas,
sweetheart.
tell us where you're from. Tell for the people who weren't.
Originally from Ossining, New York, but I live in West Haven, Connecticut.
Oh yes, I think you did mention that at the beginning when I was before our
pre-stopping ground.
Well, I mean, not really. He's like
no, he's closer
like
to
4 or 5
Eric.
hours from me. I think kind of close, but not super close. I'm in the tri-state area. I'm kind of where like New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania all meet. And Connecticut's not too far, but it's not too. It's not like we're right in the same county either. It's a few hours apart.
Mm-hmm.
Probably,
so have you all
probably
had
4 or 5
chance,
hours apart. I'm not sure.
And since I was gone, did you guys have a chance to actually discuss the Texas weather crisis and all, or was that waiting for me to come back?
No, we definitely we've been talking about it.
You did have a chance to talk about it.
We were just. Were you here when like that guy was just like, oh well, if they're gonna die, that just means they're lazy and they're not fit for living anyway.
All right.
So
that's like the novel.
Show? Well,
that's not just one person.
It's like the novel A Christmas Carol.
It was. Hang on. It was. I say it
Dickensian.
was the mayor of Colorado. It was the mayor of Colorado City, Texas, Tim Boyd.
What?
That's who it was. Yeah.
Look, I know that sounds callous, but people say that all the time who aren't in power.
Yeah.
We just don't hold them accountable for it. People
Right,
literally
yeah.
told me my son Tristan doesn't deserve to live because he's never going to be able to contribute to society.
Right, and they're so pro-life, right? It's like, oh, they're in the womb, make sure they get out of it. Oh, they're out of the womb, if they die, who cares?
Yeah, that's the thing,
Bunch
you
of
know.
idiots.
Yeah, that's the thing. When people are like, you know, oh, we care about families and children, or we care about this, care about that, and then they say stuff like, oh, well, if they die, it's whatever, you know. They're not the only one.
So that was something that people didn't say on our show.
Hypocrisy.
It was something just
Not
said
bad on our show.
elsewhere. Overheard. Okay. Yeah, but hopefully nobody here believes anything like that. I mean, we believe in
Oh
taking care of
yeah,
people.
no.
I mean,
It's
I'm sick of something that happens specifically in Texas where people say we don't need the government because we're so tired of the government not giving us anything, no help whatsoever. I did not see Texas talk about any sort of dispersing of emergency funds of our own state funds. All I hear about is we're going to apply to FEMA for this disaster. I'm always like, well, do we even have emergency funds in Texas? And we're supposed to be a very large state that is able to handle our own emergencies up to a certain amount, which is why you have to apply for FEMA funds. They have to gather together all the information to say, this disaster cost us more than the amount that the Texas can actually handle on our own, right? And then when FEMA gets that information, they make an assessment. Did it go past the amount that we believe Texas can handle on their own? If it does, then FEMA will step in and start providing aid. And so the idea that, so I'm always like, well, where's the Texas state disbursement to people who live here? I haven't heard anything about this. In fact, it's not being talked about anywhere. And so the next thing that I'm looking at, right?
It's no accountability, right?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I've survived hurricanes, tornadoes, and now, this little weather crisis, which seems like nothing to people living in Chicago. They're like, it's like this every winter, or in New York City, or wherever, But for us, this is actually the coldest I've ever been, and I lived in Washington State and in Virginia.
I used to this weather. Not been here for over 20 years.
Yeah, I've lived in other places where it is supposed to get colder every year. In my town, we're supposed to get 0 days of snow every year. And so, of course, we're not prepared. Everybody, I mean, you have to be educating the entire population to handle
and
what do you do when the snow
but
comes.
like ERCOT, it's called like the energy reliability counselor or something like that. But they weren't. Turns out the R was like false advertising. It wasn't reliable at all because it didn't weatherize.
And then the governor's pointing fingers at them, and everybody just, it's not us, it's them. It's not this piece, it's that piece.
It's so thing. It's like the divorced parents dynamic. It's not me, I'm your dad. It's your mom. No, it's not me. It's your thing. It's so that's everywhere in politics. Like, don't take responsibility.
Yes.
It's like the buck stops nowhere.
But most places in politics they don't have 19 years of trifecta. This is what I'm talking about. You have 19 years of Republican trifecta in Texas. They have to take responsibility for it as the legislators and the governors and so forth. And so they are going to, if you listen to them and you hear them trying to push the responsibility off somewhere else, you just know there's absolutely no chance.
Why have responsibility when you can buy a plane ticket? It's like
oh, right, Ted Cruz style. So I actually thought, hey, if Ted Cruz is going to teach me something, he says I should get out of town.
No, I mean,
So,
the wall wouldn't keep Ted Cruz out.
So I actually did have to leave my town at the end of the as soon as the snow melted, right? Everybody is sitting in town with all of their laundry because they don't have water in their pipes. And even after the water came back on, they couldn't get the pressure back up because everybody wanted to use it at the same time, so on and so forth. So I did take a page from Ted Cruz and get out of town, which is why I've, really been, I was so stressed out that I really couldn't do much, and I did not come and participate for the whole of February almost. Just too much stress.
It's fine.
I ended up going to Dallas area just so that I could do my laundry because we had so much laundry piled up during that time.
That's crazy. Yeah, like that's the thing. Sometimes like sometimes our laundry thing doesn't work and we have to take it to a family's, but we take care of each other, and that's the good thing. Our vacuum breaks, maybe we go to my aunt or something like that and borrow one. But yeah, like that's
not really a big thing to it's not actually that big of a problem for us because we do have friends, Yang Gang, out in Houston, in both Houston and Dallas, who were very gracious and allowed us to share their homes. But for most people, that wasn't an option. And so again, it's like when you go when I went to the town hall where people were discussing it with their representative, there was one held by a wonderful representative up in down in the Houston area. So I participated in this, and what you hear is the stories of people who were really suffering, but they always preface it by saying, I feel blessed despite having gone through X, Y, and Z. No matter what horrible thing happened to you, something even worse happened to somebody else who isn't even on the show or who isn't able to get out and actually talk about it because, so much horror happened during this time. So people lost their lives. There was a young boy who died and they believe that it was from, the cold. And then you always have the Texans again. It's that one narrative that happens maybe more in Texas than in other places, but I think in a lot of the South, we have this narrative that you have a personal responsibility to take care of all situations that arise. Don't blame anybody else.
Well, here's
And
the
so
thing. It's okay to have that kind of like mindset when you're just like an individual, and sometimes not even then. But if you're like a governing body that's saying people should take like personal responsibility, well, it's your personal responsibility to make sure that these people are being taken care of, you hypocrite moron. It's like, it makes me so mad.
Yeah, like if you're a governor, if you're like a state agency, if you're like any sort of organization where it's your job to look after us,
Right.
then
You're not
for you to
doing your
say something
job.
like that, it's yeah.
Right.
And
Like
it actually and it leads to people adapting that same sort of rhetoric or whatever. And it's like, just spraying
like
the poison.
just like the king turtle of the hypocrites, McConnell said, like, oh, we're afraid that they won't be doing their jobs. You haven't been doing your job for the past decade, you rotten idiot. It's like, I get so frustrated. It's like, you want to talk about people not doing their jobs? Look in a mirror lately, jerkbag.
he sees his job differently than how we see his job, right? Because we're seeing his job as taking care of us, but he's seing his job as obstruction. So he's doing a great
taking
job at
advantage
obstructing
of every
any sort of
I
legislation.
think Andrew Cuomo said something like that as well one time.
Yeah,
What?
it's not just
Oh, man.
low. It's not just the It's not just Republicans, Democrat, all of them. It applies to everybody. If your job is like a leadership or stewardship position, like at the end of the day, the buck stops with you, and you take the L. But we're seeing all these narcissistic, sociopathic scum suckers who are in
School
these
bullies.
positions, and it's not okay. It has to
But
stop.
there's
Yeah.
there's a lot of discussion about where the responsibility
Bullies.
lies, and in
Bullies with
Texas, there's a
power.
lot of sort of this toxic narrative of how it's always the individual, right? Not only can the individual not change the weather pattern and be prepared for every kind of weather they've never experienced before, but it's like there's the insurance companies then follow suit and do the same thing. They're going to ask, did you weatherize your home? If you did not do X, Y, and Z, maybe you won't get paid, and now you'll just be, stuck with this house that is unlivable, right? A condemned house. There's all sorts of stuff that's going to happen. It's going to be so horrific in our state for some time to come, and it didn't have to be, right? We had actually warnings about the weather at least a week in advance. Some people say 2 weeks. And during that time, they had time to prepare. And not only that, we had time in the last 19 years. Apparently, there's been actually engineering reports done before that said, we could weatherize by doing these very simple things. And so I heard some of those things at the Representative Rosenthal's event. I think his name is John Rosenthal. He himself is an engineer in this, specifically having to do with flow of oil and gas, right? So he was an engineer in this particular industry. And so he said, weatherizing is not that difficult. He said, you think that, we don't know how to, actually, we have considered all of these, but we just don't have the regulations that require people to do this. We don't have people, checking up to make sure that all of the private industry people are doing what they should.
You know, that's important, because the thing is like, if you actually believe in this whole ideology of like individuals are responsible for themselves and government is not the answer, then why are you part of a governing body? Why are you in a leadership
Yeah,
position?
what's the point
If your
behind it?
main ideology is that this stuff is useless and it doesn't work, then why are you a part of it? That's like saying I don't believe in abortion, but I work in an abortion clinic, but I'm going to screw up all the abortions because abortion doesn't work. It's
That's
like,
not
you
that's not
know,
how that's not how a leader's supposed to act. And I mean, if we were
right.
to let's say Andrew Yang was was taken on a or if he became the mayor or governor, whatever position, but since it's going to be
Right.
mayor now, but let's say he's already in. Usually his approach would be like, okay, so we got these problems, we got all these stuff. Okay, so let's do this, and then someone says, well, we're not able to access
Right.
that because of X reason. And he's gonna be like,
Right.
well, why not? It's like it's right
That,
there.
that,
It's like,
that,
why can't we use it? Well, it's
that-
reserved for like no. It's for the people.
that's
No.
so funny.
So it's like that's
It's
how a
like
leader would do. They wouldn't say, oh, well,
getting
whatever.
somebody getting like a Trump supporter out on the streets and hiring them for a position at CNN where they're actively saying CNN is fake news while they're anchoring the news. It's like, if you don't believe the
No,
thing that you're a part of, you shouldn't be there. You
it's
know?
it's very
Sheridan, when did
contradicting.
you drop in? I don't know if Sheridan's fully here with
Sheridan,
us.
yeah.
I am.
Sheridan.
Sorry for being late, guys. I just was enjoying the conversation and didn't want to interrupt by saying I was late
Well,
today.
my first day
Please.
back, I was going to have to talk about all this horrible stuff that happened in Texas because I live here.
Yeah, and
So-
I didn't want to intrude because it is truly horrible, and you need all that focus and attention and relief if we can get you more resources. Because I still hear that
I'm
Texas
okay
is doing great.
personally. Yeah, I'm okay personally. I actually had a contract signed with my energy provider. That's the next piece of this. Okay, so the real problems that happened was, first, of course, the weather was cold, and we didn't prepare for that. So many people didn't even have the proper clothes or shelter, right? Secondly, then the cold turned into an energy crisis because the energy things were not weatherized. So we lost power. So without power, then it becomes even more cold, right? The next thing is when everything became that cold, water pipes were freezing over. And so we have then the water fixing, which takes a long time. That spans. So now power is back on for most people, but the water shortage is very, very long. And then fourth, which is going to be actually possibly the most long lasting and the worst impact of all, and the most man-made, the most avoidable, is the economic impact for people who got bills of like in excess of $10,000, in excess of $20,000. Average people who just use normal amounts of energy were getting bills in the 15,000 range. And not only was it just billed, because if it was billed to you, okay, you might go to pay it later and say, hey, I'm not going to pay that and we'll figure it out later. But it actually was taken out of people's accounts automatically, taken from their credit cards or taken from their bank accounts directly, immediately. And so these were all things that were allowed by regulation, right? People were allowed to not have a contract with their electric bill companies. So I have a contract with my electric bill company that says how much my energy is going to be charged to me every single month. And I have that for the next 2 years or whatever. Okay, which some people don't like because they're like, oh, we're getting, locked down into a contract. But it protected me in this case.
Yeah.
It did not protect people who didn't have such a contract, who decided to go with an energy,
the
they didn't
variable
have
rate ones,
the
right?
variable rate, so they could be charged any amount whenever the energy rate changes, not realizing, that during the time of disasters, this is what really happens. So
it's the exact same thing as price gouging, because those variable rates, for the most part, are an economic advantage. It was cheaper. It was able to get more people electricity. But yeah, like you were saying, during these disasters, the economics just don't work to provide energy to people when literally you cannot provide them that energy. Those costs are applied definitely because it was the cost of weatherizing all that equipment. That's what these companies are trying to do, is trying to offload their economic burden. And
Well, but I mean, there's some, you could argue that that is always going to be the case, right? Anything that, and this is the argument that happens in Texas, is that, well, if we ever legislate and it costs the corporations something, then of course they're going to charge it to us. But charging it to everybody across the entire state is different from charging it to one person who needs that energy right now in order to live.
More importantly,
Mhm.
by having energy companies properly regulated, it's your political bargaining power that you're using to reduce these costs. You're using your power in a democracy to assert that these common goods will only cost this much, because the companies clearly can make a profit at this price, and the people do not need to pay more than this price. So
Isn't that
Yes.
a crime?
in Texas, apparently.
Yeah, in Texas, we have allowed all of these things to exist. And of course, the corporation, what happens during this time, they immediately just go bankrupt because they collect as much as they can from the people that they were able to, draw the money out from. And then there's more money that they can't, because they couldn't just shut off your electricity on demand. They have they have to provide it during that time. But while providing it, they, basically go bankrupt. And so it's bad for the corporations as well. They think they're doing very well, and then all of a sudden they hit one of these events and then out they go. But a corporation dying is nothing like a person dying. Those are not
Exactly.
equivalent whatsoever.
Yeah, they are not at
So-
all. And that's, especially as an energy company, like you are in such a grand position being a common utility that you can just get that golden government cash just printed for you. So it is absurd to me that Texas is still all about the isolated free market model, when nowhere in the world utilizes such a model. Like,
Well, it's a lack of, I think it's a lack of forethought, I mean, if
Like,
you just
even-
think about it, you would know that this was going to happen, right? But nobody thinks about it in advance. It doesn't make sense.
Even my home
It's
state,
not really a free market.
Well,
even my home state is a lot more capitalist in this regard, where we are connected to the Mexican grid as well as the Eastern American grid, and we export our excess solar energy to Mexico as well as all the other states on the Eastern grid. We make a profit internationally because we are friendly and connected. I don't understand why Texas thinks being isolated is the way to prosperity.
Well, here's the thing. If you think about it, when they say like corporations are people, the thing is that people face consequences. People just don't have privileges, right? So if a person hurts somebody or steals from somebody or gets somebody hurt, it's either like manslaughter or straight up like murder or stealing or thievery. But when a corporation does it, it's like, oh well, they're this tangled web of people, so we can't really punish them. But we can give them all the privilege, but we can give them none of the consequences. Now that's not a person, that's an oligarch.
Yeah, it does
That-
beg the
you know-
question that if criminal gangs incorporated into the American legal system, would they be given immunity?
Right.
Oh yeah, like
So,
they'll be given all sorts of excuses. They'll be saying like not just like the web of like what you were saying, Ariel, but also like like, oh, they're only human and we all make mistakes. They'll pull that card, rather than like hey, if this was anybody else, they would be held to the full extent of the law.
Right.
So it's like
It's
to be
like
more selfish.
it's like oh, corporations are people, but in the asterisk somewhere, corporations are people that can commit crimes with immunity. Those are the kinds of people that they are.
It's pretty different. I think the interesting things that I heard about at the town hall were the human stories, the people talking about what really happened to them. There was somebody who was saying that in terms of this, she actually she was on Gritty. I think it's one of the major companies that was doing this variable rate, and who is of course now out of business. But Gritty was trying to inform its customers, and so she at some point, she got an alert or something, and she looked at it, and she's like, okay, well, the rates are going up, but it never occurred to her the astronomical rate that it could go up, and now she's out $15,000 or whatever. But she's looking at it, she's like, okay, well, I'm just going to use the minimum that I need and all this. But they were actually recommending to people that if you couldn't afford it, you should just go to a hotel right now. Imagine that. That, if you can't afford it, your only solution at that point is to basically turn off everything in your home and go to a hotel. If there was a hotel space for you, because not enough, who knows if there was enough for all the people who really needed it.
Right.
And here you are, an able-bodied young person, who, if you just had your home working, everything would be fine. You could weather this easily. This is a completely artificial, right? This is not something that weather created. This is something that human regulation created.
Yeah,
And so the economic problem should be solved.
Yeah.
And yet, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to emphasize, because I'm an electrician by training, so I have done a lot of research on our grids, and it really is just so unbelievably stupid that, and it's out of a very weak concern about federal regulation. Like, the federal regulation that Texas already endures is far grander than connecting to the grids. Like, it's very minor, and it's really purely economic. Just the cost of weatherizing their plants and their wiring and their grid, which they're doing now anyways because this disaster happened. They could have done years ago, and this never would have happened.
Well, this is the same thing that Mr. Rosenthal was saying, who's a representative. But the real problem is, of course, that most representatives are not engineers, and they're not very forward-thinking in the way I see it. And if you look at what's going on with the entire state of Texas, we have an aversion to any type of legislation. We talk about federal, but we don't even like state legislation because our state legislature only meets once every other year. I mean, think about how much time is a whole year in terms of emergencies and disasters.
I get angry at New Mexico's short sessions every other year that is only like under 3 months long versus their normal 6-month session in the off political years.
Okay. So you guys have sessions every year, but you have a short session.
Exactly. I get mad at that short session. I could not live in Texas at all with just one session a year. Come on. Like,
is Texas, right? Texas is such a large state with a lot of issues, a lot of people with competing interests, a lot of things we need to be discussing
major influx of
as a
people.
group.
Like, they are seriously sucking a lot of people from the other states. They need to recognize their responsibility,
Well, sure. We exchange people with other states all the time, even in the other direction. So there's a lot of flowing back and forth. But Texas itself is just very huge. And to think that, a short session could actually address the needs of our state in terms of legislation is just completely ridiculous. But we haven't, we can't even talk about changing that. And so in the meantime, like during the entire pandemic, it was just the governor alone up there calling for, whatever he does. He calls for a panel. The panel didn't even have any doctors on it. It didn't have scientists. I mean, so what are we talking about in the pandemic? Just corporate interests, right? I mean, what do the corporations want in our state? That's all they want to talk about. Did they have a doctor sitting on there? Did they have a scientist? No. And so these are the choices that one person gets to make for the entire state. And then we don't talk about the reasons why these things happen in our state. So there's this high dependence on church and community. And we say, we're not going to have government take care of us. We're going to get church to take care of us. And we like it better because it's so fast, it's so efficient, so on and so forth, but it's so much work. And it requires you to be social in a way. There's a lot of people who just don't have that in them, right? They're not social. They're not going to participate. And so what these people are just supposed to be left out there alone to die, or because they're not participating in your church. I really
relate to
can't
that
agree with
quite
that.
hard. That's really why I'm like fighting so hard for a basic income, because it shouldn't be up to these community charities that we rely on the most basic services for our way of life. We've built a massive market-based economy, and our government simply isn't allowing us to properly utilize it. And it's kind of insulting in a way that our human value is tossed aside so easily for quick, short-term political careers, really. Because political change lasts far longer than any of these incumbents are going to live. And they don't care. They just
Very high.
don't care.
It can have far-reaching effects too, into every corner, into people's lives who are not connected to this or that particular community center. So the good food that you have shouldn't depend on which church you go to.
Exactly. Because that is honestly antithetical to our First Amendment as well, to have such a reliance on a single religious organization, or to have religious organizations compete for a market share of basic services.
And not everyone goes to a church. Some people go to synagogues and mosques. But still, like, if somebody told me like all of your help in your life is going to come from the synagogue, and I wasn't particularly religious, I would be like, okay, that's I'm pretty sure they don't even do that in Israel.
Well, there's almost, I feel like there's almost this, this position from church leaders sometimes that they're also not interested in legislation because it keeps them more, important in the community when everybody has to come to you for their disaster relief.
That one mega church guy, I'm blanking on his name, but he's a really
down in Houston.
Joel Osteen.
I don't even want to say his name.
Osteen, that's the one. He was forced during this last crisis to open his mega churches to homeless, because again, in a crisis. Yeah, this past one. Because
because he was really criticized when he closed his doors during our hurricane.
That's what I was about to say. He did the same thing. He had to be cyberbullied into doing the right thing. And it's like, if you're a leader of a mega church like that, I don't think that you can properly utilize the tax-exempt status if you're not going to follow your preachings.
Well, Houston is a very interesting town because Houston, again, it's this lack of regulation that people love about Texas or hate, right? Depending on which side you're on. So Houston is a very large city with no zoning. Think about that. No zoning. You could build anything. You could call it a church. And then you could have on that church, you could have family units. You could have residents. You could have, business stores. All in the same plot that you buy. There's no zoning.
So based off of that, are you saying like zoning is like it regulates like where you build, or actually where you should build, let's say
zoning,
the idea like putting shelters on a golf course, does does the zoning help with that?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So the zoning determines what type of things can build somewhere, because that's how the cities usually do their planning. So what the city planner does will say, okay, we're going to designate this area as industrial, and then we're not going to have power plants in the residential area. And then we're going to, have financial district or whatever. So these are different districts. If you've ever played SimCity or something like that,
in Texas, it's just
then you would have applied zoning.
Yeah.
And you would also say residential 1 for single residences, and then you would have multiple residentials, and you can have, and which actually, you can be on either side of the issue because done well or poorly, right? If you do it poorly, people will say, well, how come we can never have a house and then run our business out of it? You just zone this so that we can't run businesses in our own homes. Whereas in Taiwan, everybody has a business down on the first floor, then the second floor is your residence, right? This is how the zoning works in Taiwan. Whereas very poor zoning, I think, would be this, R1 everywhere, the urban sprawl.
Well, that's more conducive to
there's no zoning
having to go to Walmart or order from Amazon.
We have those sorts So we have those sorts of businesses over in Chicago. I mean, well, I don't think a lot of them, and they're pretty run down. Like the one you're mentioning, Faye, like where the first level you have the business, and the second level you have like the house, the residency where they sleep and stuff. So yeah, we have those, but it's like it's not like it's not well put together. It's like I said, it's pretty run down and degraded. And also, a lot of businesses are coming out of like certain areas, like on the outskirts and the southwest side or wherever in the Chicago area. Was like
But
you got to go to the suburbs, the burbs or whatever, in order to get high scale sort of stuff. Or if you're in the downtown area, you got to go to like you know like by the Mag Mile or
I
on the
mean,
north side or
it all
yeah.
depends. Maybe they just don't take care of their stuff, and it doesn't have to do with it's the first floor and then the residence. Because in Japan, like they have like this. Like I was in the 19th floor at this place I was staying. Then on the first floor, they had this beautiful like market. It was nice. It was clean. It was neat, and people were
Yeah, it's a
friendly.
hybrid. It's a market slash restaurant. I think I've
Yeah,
seen videos on
yeah,
that,
something
right?
like that. So I don't think that that's like the zoning thing. Maybe that those business owners just don't take that very good care of their businesses. I don't think it's because they're located on the first floor and the rest of their residence is located on the top. But anyway, Sheridan, going back to what you said about like Joel Osteen, at least he wasn't actively like harming the people when they wanted something like him. But there's a guy, Kenneth Copeland. Some of these like televangelist guys, they're the worst of the worst. Some of them were saying
Yeah.
that he was saying like even if your stimulus is your only money and you don't even have a job and you don't know where more of your money is coming from, still donate it to me. And he had a private jet. And he had like all of
Yeah,
these,
he's
like,
Yeah, cult like.
That's
I was
amazing.
actually discussing it with my campaign manager because he's like, you need to make sure that you snag or at least cut ahead of the argument that this basic income is going to just be scammed out of people. Because now that it's becoming a more real policy that people are able to really run on and gain voters with, you need to be able to defend it properly. And he's absolutely right because he's worked in banking for most of his career, so he knows that especially banks and big organizations will use every procedural move that they have to properly extort their customers. And
Yeah.
religious services, especially very scam services like Kenneth Copeland, go a
Exploit City.
step further.
Yeah, for sure. Well,
So-
here's the thing though. They'll do it with your regular paycheck anyway. So
Yeah,
you know.
that's part of it. That's part of it. But
And
I
also,
argue that that's just a cultural thing that we need to instill even more basic income into these people to give them financial security so that they
Like
don't feel
stimulus
like they
or
need to
not.
dump their money in faith, that they can plan their lives, they can buy the things that will make their lives materially better.
Well, the faith issue, that's what I'm saying. That the reason that I bring up the zoning, the lack of is because that's partly why everybody wants to build a church. A church is a tax haven, right? A church is not only a community. This is the way that most people think about. They're talking about the religion, the moral aspects, but what it is really the tax haven in Houston. And so you can own your home, and then you say, well, maybe I'll declare this property a church. How do I do that? It's very easy to do in Houston, right? And then you have lack of zoning. So anytime you want to convert space, oh, I bought this old thing. I'll just call this a church from now on. I put up a sign. It's a church, right? I have to hold meetings. Then now it's a church. So there's certain things that you have to do in order to declare yourself a church, right? And then all of a sudden you get all these tax benefits. So why wouldn't you do it? And then you've got here, so without the zoning actually makes a big difference in the culture of the city. So you will have things like the oil rig is right next to a porn shop, is right next to a giant, tower, for financial tower or whatever. Just everything just next to each
Liquor store
other.
in every corner.
Well, we also have, I worked at a shop where the shop was an auto shop, but right next to it was, basically never mind. I better not.
Wow.
I think we
Back
need
back
more
to me.
homes than churches. Because like there are a lot of people out on the street and who need a better housing situation, and these shelters aren't like really shelters either. So it's like,
You know,
I've
Well,
actually I
yeah,
had
what I'm
that.
saying is like these are the things that make it difficult for other people to understand Texans and to understand the way that Texans think. It's different because of all of these different, it's the anti-regulation. It is built into the system in Texas because of the things we've already done. Right, like it's making a choice for a large city like Houston to have no zoning. That creates all kinds of problems. Right? How are you supposed to build the infrastructure of the city if you don't know how much water you need to use in this area because somebody might suddenly decide to build, a mega tower on this piece of land just because they can, as some rich person decides to buy this piece of land up and they want to build something. Okay, well, now you got to retool the whole city to be able to provide water, to provide a sewer, to provide all kinds of services. So the things that will happen in Houston, that's another thing is that they have these giant sort of homeowners associations, and they are very powerful. Boy, you get a letter from the homeowners association, you better get on it. Your lawn isn't mowed, or you don't have, you didn't put wood chips down on your trees, right? The homeowners
I actually have
association
one
is
of
coming
those in
after
my
you.
area. I actually
Okay.
have one of those in my area. As a matter of fact, like it's in a like I said like I'm on the south side of Chicago. It was actually called Riverdale, Illinois, but technically it is the south side because the city limits is right down the street. But yeah, we do have like one of those like where you get it's not even like a letter of like reminder or whatever, but also they'll have people coming down the street checking to see if your lawn is cut or or you cleaned out some stuff, whatever. And if they don't see you cutting the grass or whatever, they're gonna like I think they give you a hefty fine or something. I mean, I'm not up to speed with a lot of that, but I think like yeah, they give you a big fine and stuff.
Texas
But they
is
become
a
like
Ridiculous, man.
super
uniquely hard
powerful.
case.
Equivalent. They're basically the real life equivalent of the all powerful student council in anime. You know what I mean?
Hey, is it Harry? Harry, you just joined us, correct?
Oh no, I joined you guys about maybe 10, 20 minutes ago, I think, but nobody noticed.
Oh, sorry about that.
I had
So
a
please go ahead. Yeah.
similar discussion with my fiance about churches and whether they should be tax exempt, because I think that the current law is more or less appropriate for churches. And she talked about the homeless people and the shelters that churches turn away, especially like in this last crisis. And then this is going to be hard for Texas because they are very much against regulation and the government coming in and setting rules. But the reality is we need systemic change that is equivalent and the same throughout regions. And the only way you get that is through regulation, because homeless people not being taken care of by churches is not a failing on our church law. It's a failing on the fact that we have homeless people, that we have empty homes and people that are capable of filling them but don't have the money to fill them. That's the real
It could
problem.
also be the failing on the part of people who could be people who have a lot of power and money who run these giant institutions who aren't actually doing all they can to build the infrastructure that the government refuses to build. You know what I mean? Because it's like,
Most notably internet, like ISPs
yeah,
still have left I think it's 50 or 58 million people without regular broadband internet.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Here's a disgusting headline, Sheridan. Jeff Bezos built shelters for homeless Amazon employees.
wow, that's hysterical.
Homeless employees. Wow. Yeah.
How
Hmm.
pathetic.
That's
How
that's pretty ironic.
That's
Yeah.
that actually highlights
Hmm.
a lot of Amazon's
It's like a
move
slap to
now,
the face. It's like really.
because
Mhm.
a decade ago we had the whole too big to fail economic crisis, right? But now Amazon actually is too big to fail. They are literally
Yeah.
lobbying for proper economic policies now that will shift a lot of our national
Right.
economic landscape,
Well,
particularly on the wage front. Amazon's actually fighting for a higher minimum wage and lobbying for it, primarily because it's going to put its competitors out of business.
you know an H&R Block tax filing?
You mean the unions, not
Well,
not like the corporation itself?
sometimes if you ask for your tax refund in Amazon money, they say we'll give you 5% more or something like that. So it just goes to show you when that money is going to be trapped with Amazon, and they're just going to grow and grow and grow.
No, Izzy, what you're talking about, I think, is a specific news story out of Alabama that an Alabama organization is actually trying to
Yeah.
push for an Amazon union. I'm talking about the actual corporation and its lobbying efforts. It shifted
Yeah.
a couple years ago from lobbying against higher wages and lobbying against worker protections, and has shifted a little bit to actually lobbying for higher wages and just not caring about worker protections and just working on its own internal anti-union busting. So
They're
it's
only
still
doing it to
trying to
like.
keep the
They're
corporation.
only doing it to like thin out the competition to like
Exactly.
not out of
they're being
generosity.
they're actually too big to fail now, and they're using the too big to fail playbook.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
all
So what
politics.
happens is once you make it, right? Once a corporation really makes it, then they turn around and then say, we want to make it harder for smaller companies to get into the same industry we're doing. We're going to
Yep.
do things that are easy for us and difficult for them. So now that they've already paid with all of their kickbacks from local governments, right,
Small
in the form of
businesses.
tax rebates to allow them to build in their towns or come to their locations. After they've gotten all these great money, all these benefits from the city governments and local municipalities, then they say, okay, we are using that to build robots. So they've built all their robot things, and now they're like, well, we only need a few people to run our plants, so we can afford to pay everybody more, right? And so now it makes everybody else harder to get into the book industry or whatever it is that they've already taken over and completely
Disgusting.
disrupted.
That's just.
Yeah.
By the way, there was a point about like churches and being tax havens and stuff, and like how they turn people away that I wanted to like say something about, because I've noticed a lot that like churches kind of like are sort of like isolated. Well, not isolated per se all the time, and it's like a lot of times it feels like churches sort of like are like where people are most vulnerable with each other and where they like sort of like are most in their factions, if that makes any sense. Because like people are most likely to be like more vulnerable with like each other about their hopes and fears and everything like that when they're in the spiritual community, but that also means that people who are going to the same church and only one church and no other churches means they're only connecting with certain kinds of people who they're more used to and not connecting with everybody else as much, and I was wondering, like, if people started going to more churches besides the ones they're most familiar with, maybe those sorts of divides could be bridged a bit more, and then people people actually could build more infrastructure, grassroots style, without needing to depend on the government who's being too stingy.
Well, Harry, that's true, and I do try to participate in various religious organizations. So I have been to the local mosque over up in Tyler. It's not very local, but it's about an hour away. That's the closest one. And I have been to the Buddhist meditation temple. I haven't been to a synagogue recently. I just don't know that there is one in my town. So I used to go to see down in and so basically this is something that individuals choose to. Again, it's back to sort of You're looking at individual level responsibilities and ways to get around the fact that we don't have good legislation. Are you trying
Tyler's
to
pretty far
speak up?
behind.
Well, if the
Are
government
you trying to speak up? Because I heard somebody take his mic off mute. Lucas, did you want to say something?
No, I didn't say anything. I don't know why I background
okay.
like that.
Oh, okay. All right.
I mean, it seems to me like if the government's gonna be too stingy and if the government's not like willing to actually regulate anything themselves, we just need to do the regulation ourselves. You know what I mean? Like grassroots style, self-government. You know, because like if they're not like it's like we're supposed to have government by the people for the people, but it's like if the government we have is refusing to lead, we just need to lead ourselves. You know?
Yeah, well,
Well,
that gets
Yeah,
I'm
let us
into
take
basically an
over.
anarchist at heart, so I don't have any problem with that. But currently, we have experiencing very poor management of human beings um, in relationship to each other. And so, whenever you have two people or more, right, somebody has to make decisions together, and it's very difficult to do that without any sort of government.
Yeah, that's where it gets into your local grassroots politics, where you have your precincts, your wards, your chapters of and county level political groups that can help put pressure on your leadership, and that's kind of the hard part here. Is you need to engage the masses to use these tools of government that are quite literally just lying around without enough people behind them to push them into being more material.
So, yeah, hooray for grassroots. If only grassroots were allowed to actually talk to campaigns.
We're working on it.
Well, that's why we need to grow our own grassroots network horizontally. Get all the little channels on our side. You know what I mean?
Tom from Nerds for Humanity just released a great update video today about his page, the ofthepeople.us, and they have like 13 national candidates and a couple of local candidates now, and I finally got my profile up on their page, so definitely check
Very
it out.
nice. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
it is very nice.
Sheridan Lund.
Yep,
Lund.
I even got mentioned in the video once.
Awesome.
I should have gotten mentioned a couple of times, but I messed up my tagging, so I fixed that this morning.
Also, for
So I
those
know I kind of ran away with. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was saying also real quickly for those who haven't seen it yet, I recently wrote up a spreadsheet as sort of like a directory of all like the content creators on the Trickle Up. I don't know if you guys have all had the chance to see it yet, but I recently just went on the Trickle Up website, pulled up all the like names of channels and like publications on there and stuff, and just started putting the information down in the spreadsheet. So with content information, social media stuff, you know, so that people should be able to like see like what all like is in the Trickle Up.
Yeah, that's awesome. Have you hopefully Boyce gets to see it too soon, who is the Boyce Littlefield working on the trickleup.com.
Yeah, I hope.
Did you know that Boyce has his own Discord server?
No, I did not.
Yeah, so maybe I'll send you an invite and then you could discuss it with him on the Discord.
Yeah, that'd be
Very
great.
good. Okay, so I know I kind of ran away with Texas for a good hour, so thank you guys for letting me do that. I wanted to get back to where we started, which is talking about that stimulus that is recently coming out, right? And I put up on our as a bullet point that tweet by Jeff Stein. Here are the biggest provisions according to his tweet: the $1,400 checks per adult and kid, unemployment at $300 through September 6th. I'm glad they made it through a bigger chunk of time instead of going, oh, we're going to revisit that every month. Okay, $350 billion for cities, states, tribes, $3,000 per year per kid, 6 to 17. That would cover Zephyr for me, and $3,600 for kids 0 to 6. Okay, and somebody was asking for how long. I think that's for a year. So what does it mean by per year? I don't know. I guess it's per year for this year. Then $170 billion for schools and $100 billion for, I don't know if that's everything, but that's the main things. One of the things that I like about it is that at least the unemployment is covered for a time. The children are covered for some time. Okay. And I would like to see the checks become recurrent and cover a certain period also, not just once. Because once is not really something you can budget for. You blow it once and that's it. If you actually need to use the money. So go
So
ahead.
this is something that actually passed. They actually passed a real stimulus check that was that big.
Well, the
No, this one is
the
go ahead.
$1.9 trillion dollar bill, the American Rescue Plan, did pass the Senate, but it's a different bill than what passed the House because the parliamentarians said no to minimum wage. The Democrats don't care about the minimum wage, and there's a provision to reduce the stimulus check eligibility from 200 for couples to I think 70 for couples, and then half that for singles.
I get $170.
Sorry, 170K.
Okay. I mean,
So-
is this a month or per year or what?
Based on your most recent tax return, either 2019 or 20.
This is a yearly thing.
Yes, it's a one-time check based on the yearly, but the Senate bill shaves off a ton of people. Like I think it's 6 or 8 million people are not going to get these $1,400, even though
And
they
for a lot
got the
of the
last
rest of us,
600.
they refuse to enforce it like usual.
What's that?
A lot of the rest of us are going to choose not to enforce it like usual.
Yep.
So us who are supposed to get our stimulus checks who still haven't, they're just not going to send it to us so they don't have to because they don't actually represent us.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
Washington.
apparently, according to Jeff Stein, that money for the child tax credit, is going to be sent via direct deposit, depending on IRS capacity, on a periodic basis. So it's sort of like a UBI for kids.
Yeah,
Oh,
but
wow.
it's only
So then the
lasting
kids are
for a
going to be
year.
fleeced by their parents. That's great.
Well, it's only
Pardon me?
lasting for a year, so
Even
Yeah.
it's still periodic for the kids. This is gonna, it's like their parents are gonna start fleecing them for money. Like that's really messed up.
Fleecing. Well, when they say they send it for the kids, they mean they're going to the parents for the kids.
Oh, gotcha. Well,
yeah, it's a child tax.
It's not.
It sounds like you're only making it periodic for the kids and not for the parents or something. Like
Now that
It wouldn't make
honestly be
sense to
better.
give it to kids who are like babies, 0,
I personally
1.
think that would be better. I think that every American, no matter the age, should be entitled to their own capital.
yes, agreed.
And it would just sit on it until they got to where they could actually spend
So
it.
they can understand it, yeah.
Right. It's just that from the sound of it, it sounds like you guys were saying that like, kids would be getting periodic checks, for the entire year, while the adults would only be getting like a one-time thing, and it was like, wait a minute, does that
That's
mean
basically
that
what it
have more
shakes
financial
out to be.
power than
That is what's happening. That is really what's happening, though. The
Oh.
adults are getting a one check.
Well, the kids
We're
are
not getting the $1,400 over a period of a year. We're getting it as a single check. Whereas the kids are going to get, if you have a kid, then the parent will get a certain amount. I actually agree with that because I think, maybe a UBI where kids get money set aside for them until a certain age would work someday. But right now, people, provide for their children. So
Yeah. And I would also say that you said it's deposit. So would that, because the thing is, some teenagers probably have their own bank accounts, right? So would that mean that they would actually get money that their parents don't have access to?
Well, again, it's
no.
the way that this works is it's a dependency tax credit, kind of like a negative income tax credit.
So then would that mean that mine would go to the Franklin County Guardianship Board instead of
Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Any income that you get goes there.
Do
Do you have income that ever gets direct deposited to you, or does it go to somebody else
So
if you were to make money?
first goes to the SSI account, which is controlled by the payee company, and then after that, the payee company direct deposits some of that money to me to my account.
And so at this point, you've never received a stimulus check because you're considered an adult dependent, correct?
Basically, yeah.
And so this would actually cover you this time. You would not be considered a kid. You'd be an adult dependent. And you are included in this round of $1,400.
Okay, that's good. Let's hope they
But
actually.
you are in the same you're in the same position as college students.
Right.
So
Well, some college students, like for example,
yeah.
if you don't live with your parents, you're considered off campus. Most I'm trying to think of the word. Oh, accountants or CPAs or whatever tax service you use will just put you as a single head of household because you're not with your
right, because
you're not a dependent.
Yeah.
It may also depend on I think it does depend on whether parents want to claim you. So if they're paying for all of your stuff and they say, we're claiming you as a dependent because that's, better for our taxes, I think they have the right to do that.
Right.
And then you would not be able to find
is an agency of the government. So they'd probably want to cut their costs because of the government,
So like my mom helps me, right? I'm technically would be an adult dependent, except my mom doesn't claim me on her taxes.
Right.
She wants me to have my own household for Zephyr and believes that it's better for me that way. And it's something that she decided. But I think if she wanted to claim me as a dependent, then that's how it would go. So the taxes, IRS would look at it and say, dependent. Is she correct? If she's able to, then I wouldn't have a choice.
Right.
Right. So she's in control of that situation.
So then the question is, could a government agency claim me as a dependent on their taxes?
Do they have taxes for tax agencies? Probably not, but you are probably considered dependent because they say so, right? That's just how you're classified.
I think our ABC or alphabet soup agencies get budgets, not tax returns.
Oh.
And yet they would probably still, there's probably some exception or some exact, definition that defines.
I would be surprised if I were receiving the $1,400 check, because I've been told that if my total combined money ever exceeds $1,500, then I lose the SSI.
Oh.
So not to alarm anybody who's getting an SSI, because some people may not know you, Harry. We know you better because we've podcast with you, on a weekly basis. Maybe you could tell people about your specific situation that makes it different than other people who are on SSI.
Ah, gotcha. Well, in my case, I have a payee that was basically forced on me by the government here in Franklin County in Columbus, Ohio. Because there's a weird rule here that says if you have a guardian, if you're an adult with a guardian, you need to also have a payee. So even though it's guardianship of the person, not of the estate, so technically they're not supposed to have control of my money, but there's this weird legal loophole that lets them do it anyways. It's like, because if I were to get a job and get income from somewhere other than SSI, that would not be technically would not be under the payee's control. However, the job market is the job market's basically a ghost town right now, so it's like there's not enough full-time paid jobs to go around, so it's like, and it's like, do I want to sacrifice what little financial security I have to work for an employer and get enough money to completely not have to rely on Social Security money at all? But then it's like, then I could get fired for whatever reason or for no reason, and it's like, then I'm screwed,
So your situation is actually pretty complicated, very complex, because you're saying that they're not technically guardianship of your money. So it's very strange.
That they still have control of my money, yeah.
So now I don't know if you're dependent or not. It's very confusing to me.
Yeah.
Maybe you might need to get an actual tax person to advise you on that stuff.
Yeah, you may also need like a tax lawyer to help you walk you through that.
Yeah.
Do you file your own taxes?
Not as present, because I don't have access to all of that right now.
Well, this would be interesting. Try to claim your check. Go online and fill out what you can and see if you can get your own check. because $1,400 would probably help you out.
For sure, yeah. Assuming it doesn't cost me all my SSI.
I'd hate to see any of us not receive what is, what is your right as an American citizen here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really a messed up situation. It's like
We have several of us who are not receiving their checks. For example, as soon as this came out, I was like, this is great. Zephyr is finally going to get something. But then it was like, maybe, because we still haven't received his portion of the last stimulus check. But we did get his portion of the first stimulus check like months later.
Yep.
Like it was months later though. So we really have no idea if it's ever coming or when or why. What do we need to do? Nothing. We have no idea to get it, but it may magically appear. We're just not sure how it works.
Yep.
This is so fucking weird. Like, we got $1,200 just injected into most people's accounts last year. Then at the end of last year, we get $600 injected into even fewer accounts. And now we're getting $1,400 injected to even now fewer accounts. So it really does.
Because the means testing changed. It keeps changing.
Praise us. We're doing something. We're actually doing something. Therefore, you don't have the right to criticize your rulers.
So they're doing it in the way that makes them super important. We have to ask them every month again for more money, even though they know we're in the same pandemic month after month.
Yup. It's like we have to stroke their ego. It's like beg them to help us. Like, oh, we will condescend to give you some of our wealth. It's like, come on. It's like, it's our money. It's our tax money that they're just sort of,
faffing about with. Yeah.
Honestly, whenever people talk about changing the government's leadership and incentivizing our representatives to do the right thing, and they don't care what you think. They don't care what you think. Why do you keep talking about changing their minds and trying to convince them when they're not? They don't give a shit. They don't give a shit. The only thing they care about is power. That's the language. Power and money. That's the language they speak. Which means in order for you to incentivize needed reforms and get them to actually listen to you, you first have to start building your own power first before you can get them to the negotiation table.
Yeah.
So that's part of what baffled me about all these political campaigns. People are just call your representatives and ask them, and no, they're not. That's not going to make a difference. It never does.
Yeah, being bothersome to them by sending them actual things like letters is more effective, because you have to take care of that. You can't just ignore it.
Then it requires lots and lots of effort and time and attention, which not everybody has. And on top of that, it's if they're having to deal with the letters, that's still not them representing us. That's them being annoyed until they give in. If they're being irritated until they give in on something, that's how much time and effort and money spent in order to get them to budge even a tiny bit. And meanwhile, there's all these other things that are going on that's they're not budging on, because if you have to.
Yeah, but let's be real. Annoying one person to change their mind is a lot faster than waiting for a special election because they died from being too old, or waiting for someone to actually really change the seat.
Sure, but that's only true. You're waiting on the system to change. If you're depending on the system to change, but it's just not going to. We need to be the change we want to see in the world, rather than expecting somebody else to change it for us when they don't give a shit because they're evil.
Let me frame it this way. Maybe someone can respond. Maybe Sheridan. What if I said, let's say I'm the corrupt official. I'm the person that's receiving these letters. I don't need the vote of all of my constituents. I only need a certain select handful of my constituents, and I already know where they live, I already know who they are, to keep me in power. So if you are not one of those constituents I need, I don't care how many letters you write. I don't care how many phone calls. Just go call away, pal. Go ahead. Put your energy there, because it does nothing.
Then we need to take a lesson from our Taiwanese friends in their fight for democracy and start hazing these officials' homes, not letting them sleep, having air horns blasted out of trucks in front of their doors, being real and just driving these.
Yeah, and that's why I won't condemn the people who showed up. Yeah, exactly. I agree, but that's why I can't condemn the people who showed up at the Capitol just because they're team red and I'm a little more team blue, but not really. I'm really not. They're both just equally bad at this point. They're angry for the same reasons we are.
Condemn both.
Yeah,
I'm more of a no. We can't do that.
I'm not advocating for violence, but a disruptive protest.
Well,
hazing, the not sleeping at night is not really good. Maybe during the day.
Yeah, you want peaceful, disruptive protests.
Peaceful aggression is one thing. What happened at the Capitol was domestic terrorism.
Sure. But I'm saying they're not the people that I'm so annoyed. It's predictable and it's disgusting that the elites try to direct our anger at them primarily when it's still they're angry at the same people we are. They just did things they shouldn't have done. They're still not the people who are in charge. Those people, even though they did some bad things, they are not the people who are our oppressors. They're being oppressed by our oppressors.
The leaders on the right actually stoked a lot of the hate and lies to get those people into the Capitol. So I'm right there with you that, especially from the Republican leadership, the cowardly Republican leadership, that they basically made their bed and they laid in it.
Well, I think that a lot of it is also that, the fact that most of our infrastructure, and I might be beating a dead horse here, but most of our infrastructure was built off of coasting on the scientific method for the past few centuries. So it's in the scientific method and the infrastructure that results from it, tends to benefit liberal values more than conservative values. And of course, that means that a lot of conservatives, end up trying to oppose all social progress that liberals make in order to level the playing field, so they don't get too far behind, So I'm surprised that, the Republican leadership would be stuck between a rock and a hard place on something like this, because they've built their entire, well, not their entire, but they've built a lot of what they've been doing in their ideas and how they do things on tearing down liberal social progress rather than building their own, So it's and there's those if they, it's so I'm not surprised that this happened. It's they're self-destructing because of not having their own foundational methods to compete with the ones that liberals have coasted on.
So what we need are
exactly. And that's why I say I feel that the Democratic Party is heading to a paradigm shift where this big empty tent can only hold so many of us before it fractures. And I think that that's going to be the next challenge over the next couple of years into 2022 and 2024 is showing that the GOP no longer upholds conservative Republican values, that they are no longer a meaningful party on the national stage, and that if you want change, you have to be a Democrat.
I think it's going to be a very big disaster because it's what that basically means is that it would be seen as the liberals winning against the conservatives. And that's not a good thing because, we need both liberals and conservatives in order to have
that's why
have different concerns and different types of values.
That's why I say that the Democratic Party is going to fracture. We're going to still have the conservative voice. It's just going to be a blue dog voice, not a Republican MAGA voice.
Right, but consider that there's probably a difference between the kinds of concerns and values that are most cared about and advocated for by a blue version of conservative versus just flat out conservative, I mean,
but when your party commits such a political basically catastrophe, you can't come back from that. It's been shown in the Whigs, the Federalists, every single political party that we've had. Once you make a major political blunder, like supporting slavery or overthrowing a literal government building that represents our highest office in the land, you can't come back from that.
Right, but that's when you're focusing too much on the parties rather than on the underlying cultural and socioeconomic forces that are driving them.
That's what I mean. Those forces will still exist. They're just not going to be called Republican anymore. They're going to be called Democrat or some form of Democrat.
So we're going to be like a one-party nation for a while.
For a very short time, I think so.
Yeah, it's just that, like,
not necessarily for a very short time. There is a possible future where the Democrats just write law that prevents, when they become the mono party, they can write law that prevents other parties from competing with them, and then we'll become Russia. We'll be Russia. We are going to be Russia.
First off, that's an incredible, exaggerated leap, because like even. I despise Nancy Pelosi, but even she recognizes the value of self-determination and having the opportunity, even if the barriers are high, for another party to come onto the national stage. Like, that's...
I'm not sure I'd agree with you on your assessment of Miss Pelosi.
That's primarily why she defended the Republican Party, saying that we need a strong Republican voice, because she doesn't want to have to go, we need to have a second party after the Republicans die. She would much rather have a weak Republican Party that you can just beat over the head with political stupidity over and over and over again and just keep winning a political career.
Well, in that case, the Republicans aren't going anywhere.
But didn't the Republicans gain seats in the House? This is why I'm not sure if all of this is going to come to pass.
Yeah, they gained seats in the House before they committed a political atrocity.
So you really think they're going to say they're going to just sort of allow the Republicans to pass, and then they'll have no controlled opposition, and then they must immediately produce a new controlled opposition. Otherwise, this whole thing is going to end.
This is how I see the paradigm shift and the fracturing happening. That's why I say we're going to be a one-party nation for a very, very short time, probably less than a year, because the Republicans are going to be kept on life support by the Democratic leadership until the Democratic leadership becomes so bold and brazen about their support that they basically label themselves the new Republican Party. And that's how the blue shift will happen.
You're right. You know what? You actually have convinced me. That's a very compelling argument. I think that's probably the most likely course of action. Yeah.
Wow. I mean,
and it's interesting.
What we really need is to start building like more grassroots infrastructure and spreading foundational methods at the local level that like will allow conservatives especially to start catching up with liberals in terms of their own form of social progress, like because it's like there's like the thing is like liberals have been championing all this social progress and championing the little guy and stuff, but it's like but that's not really their specialty, I guess. Like, so it's like they end up like constantly like creating their own opposition on the other side because they're not like very always that good at reaching the other side about that sort of thing. And it's like if conservatives weren't too busy trying to tear down liberal social progress in order to level the playing field, conservatives would be the ones trying to champion all the moral character development of our country. So it's like, and they would be better at that if they actually applied themselves to it. If they actually had a foundational method that allowed them to like, be able to build that up more.
If only there were non-market conservatives who eschewed the market but just love value.
That's why I tell all my conservative friends to just straight register Democrat. Like, the Republican Party is gone, and most of them nod along or straight up agree with me because they recognize the truth. They can see the writing on the wall that if you want to have a real political voice now, you simply have to change the Democratic Party or be a new conservative party. And right now, it's easier to change the Democratic Party because they're already center right.
Yeah, to be honest, I can easily see something like if enough people like build enough like infrastructure on the ground, I can easily see that turning into a bit of a more conservative party. Like if you get a lot of people who are like, in smaller like small town areas where like they don't have as much like city infrastructure, and you get them to start connecting with each other and building like bridges between them, that I could like
But
sort of
did you see Trump's letter to the RNC and CNCC about using his name to help fundraise?
no, I haven't.
His lawyers sent a cease and desist letter to the RNC and a bunch
Oh,
of
that's perfect.
local conservative organizations because
Good.
they were using his name to fundraise. So you're going to find the conservatives eating themselves as well right now. The conservative unity that Rupert Murdoch so meticulously built over the past 30 years is going to get sledgehammered by Donald Trump. It just is.
Yep. Yep.
He's out there tweeting against all of the major players now who didn't follow him.
He has his Twitter back?
So
He has his Twitter
no,
again?
not tweeting.
Oh, okay.
Not tweeting.
What is he on these days?
What is he using now?
I lost track of the old
Probably on
guy.
I need to find out.
It seems like the bubbleization
I'm trying not to find
of
out.
our society is probably taking its toll a lot on small towns because it's like when people are all isolated from each other, not talking to each other outside of their bubbles, outside of their tiny communities, that's probably going to cause a lot of people to not understand each other, not trust each other, and not work together. That is probably a large part of why conservatives might be fracturing right now.
And that's why I
It's
say
still
we need
not-
to just show them that the reason we have a unified, shared federal government is so that we all can belong to the same community, that we all have political power, and that by having a shared political power, we can lean on each other. I think that's the
So
new
you're
message.
saying that
That's a nice idea.
Single.
Someone should try it.
So you're saying that having a single party is not that scary, and so we don't have to be terrified of China, who
Well,
actually does have
while
this.
I agree, a unified political party is not the worst thing to happen. I specifically say that because I think that the cycle of history is coming back again for America. Most historians will divide our American history into 7 distinct eras of American political culture. And it's really defined by the paradigm shifts among our national parties. And in the very beginning, like while we were still getting the Constitution set up, we didn't have parties. Like our founders did not like the idea of political parties and thought that we should all simply push people that we feel would represent us the best instead of having parties. But very quickly, within the first decade, we had the first 3 major national parties form because of one simple political reality. Having a party gives you a platform, and having a platform is a hammer you can beat over your leader's head with, saying, why are you not following the party platform? So that's why parties are so important, is so that you can have that platform hammer to probe and prod and beat your leaders with questions about why they do or do not support the party's platform.
You know what I would do if I were the Democratic Party right now, and I wanted to maintain power at all costs, which they do. If I really felt the Republican Party was going to fall, and I'm a Democratic Party, and there's going to be a new third party, this is what I do. I change the Democratic Party's bylaws. So it's a sort of internal pseudo-party that's really under my control, very technically, by the bylaws. But I create all this competition within the Democratic Party, and I say the new dynamic Democratic Party has a right wing and a left wing, and it's going to function like the new Republican Party, but it's all in the Democratic Party. So it's all under these bylaws.
How we are.
That's what they're going to try to do.
That's kind of the structure of the Democratic Party, except it's not left-right. It really is top-down.
When I think
grassroots versus national, and there's such a big divide between those.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. That's what they're going to do. So they're going to just say, we don't need it. I don't know.
It's not like written in the bylaws.
If,
it's more of the culture. It's how the leadership will help or hinder the grassroots.
So Shale asked if Trump was tweeting again, and no, but what I saw was a written statement issued on Thursday night where Trump called on Fox News to fire Karl Rove. as a political commentator, calling him a rhino. The
But I love
Republican
how
name is
audacious he
in-name
is still.
only. So
I miss our comedy
So-
president. Our creepy grandpa president is not a good comedy
I
president.
am so much happier to have the neoliberal stability rather than the fascist sabotage. Like, it is
Yeah,
truly
right?
a breath of fresh air to see like the DPA properly being used and vaccine
you
supplies.
just said something nice.
Do I
about
seem like
neoliberal.
a...
It's better for them to not give a shit about it than to be actively hostile towards
Yeah.
us.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not giving a shit versus pulling the trigger.
I can't pine for stability when we have an untenable sort of stability. We have a stable
right there with
misery, and the chaos was an opportunity, and I mourn its
it still
absence
is.
now.
It still is. That this was a moment of history. If you don't use the moment of history as it is, you're just failing as a leader. Like, you need to just tell everyone about these failings, because there's a true infinity of failings that happened, and we're going to take decades to fully utilize all of them in political speech.
Well, this has been really interesting. I think we should probably give ourselves a little time to say goodbye to everyone before we take off.
I just want to ask. I want to just ask something.
Yeah.
Question to Sheridan before we'll do the goodbyes. I'm sorry, but
Okay.
So just to get clarity, do you predict that the Republican Party will literally disband, or that it will remain but in name only, and that it will end in the sense that the current power holders will leave, but there will still be in
I think it's going to be a more petering off in the long haul. You're going to see a lot more shifts into the Blue Dog Caucus. You're going to see a lot more Democrats running in red states, even if they should, in your mind, be running as Republican, simply because the Magic R no longer has power. You can't just do things as a Republican and get off scot-free because of the major political atrocity. And that political atrocity is going to be used hard against Republicans. So even, I don't know, with the time that we're going to have before 2022 really starts to heat up against the two parties, where you will be able to start to see whether it's a culture fight or a power fight, it's going to be a very strong memory that seeing the Confederate flag in our Capitol, to see Americans scaling the walls of our legislature, to have those images run in political ads is just something you really can't run against. It's because you're either going to pin yourself against the hardcore fascists who will be violent and who will be everything they need to be to spread their fascist message, or you'll be pinned against the moderates who want you to be a Democrat. So it's really going to be hard for the, as I call them, old guard Republicans to stay as Republicans.
Or maybe some of
Sheridan?
the Gar's Republicans will become libertarians, and they'll try to get that.
That's another way that they could go, is that there's
Yeah.
a more independent voice in the Congress rather than Republican. And that's why I'm saying I don't know if it's going to be a power fight where we're talking about seat switching parties, or a culture fight where the overall strength of the party isn't there and they just start losing seats.
It's probably going to be both, I think. I would probably suspect that, a lot of it's going to come down to, cultural, a lot of the cultural stuff is going to be, cultural, between, different regions to some extent, I think. Because, a lot of, the parties, a lot of, their, whole constituency bases are, based on, regional, geographic, culture, So it's, if people start losing a lot of their faith in the federal government and stop being able to rely on them at all in the first place, they will start seeing more things like the interstate coalitions where it's like like that. What was the one like where like California and like these two other states banded together?
Yeah, it was because of the
COVID, yeah.
vaccine or the testing supplies. They made a coalition about getting their local producers to start producing stuff for the states.
Yeah, and I've read that a lot of that is like somewhat, a lot of those coalitions seem to like be somewhat along regional like cultural lines in a lot of ways. Like I read like I don't know if you guys have read about the 11 that book about the 11 cultural nations of North America or whatever.
I haven't. But can we maybe table this for discussion
yeah.
a little bit
Yeah.
on another session? Because I
Sure,
think
yeah.
I need to get going. So it's
If it,
It has been a great discussion, though, for real.
I'm going to go ahead and start off the goodbyes. Because I wanted to shout out somebody who just had a wonderful event and was on our podcast before. Her name is Yenny DeRoche, and she's running for, I think, city council in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
I forgot the name of her town. But
She's on our show last Friday. Yeah.
Oh, was she just here?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So Yenny has a amazing fundraiser that was just happening at the same time as our event. It was called Tea Brewing and Mindfulness. I've never heard of such an interesting political event, because when I think of tea, I think of quiet and peace and discussing things in a very, sort of quiet and thoughtful manner. And this is not what I think of when I think of a political town hall or a political fundraiser of any kind. So it's always have a beer, catch a coffee. It's always this, caffeine driven talky thing. So I just thought it was great that she wanted to do a tea and talk about mindfulness and joy. I mean, it's just such a feminine and wonderful thing to do. So
and I would honestly say, in regards to that, like, it feels to me like if people just stopped relying on autocorrect to just turn off all of the text correction on their mobile and computer devices, that would have a huge positive impact on our national discourse online,
Or what about now that marijuana is now legal, a lot of people have thought perhaps if world leaders actually discuss things, in a peaceable manner over a little bit of weed, that things could actually get done.
That
So anyway.
actually might make a real serious difference, and other drugs even more so.
Perhaps a few mushrooms thrown in. But anyway.
That's a good place to start.
That would be great.
So I'm at Palestine Math on Twitter, and I would like to go ahead and pass the goodbyes to Sheridan. Do you have any other events coming up for your own run?
I'm actually keeping it a little bit more low key. I'm going to be doing the basic income town halls with Shale. We're shifting our Friday night firefights to basic income town halls with candidates. If you want to check out, I will be releasing regular news on my website, lund2022.com. If you have some cash, please support me through any of the donation links or our store. I will be having events probably starting in April, May area. Right now, my state is really busy with the special election that's about to kick off as soon as Deb Haaland resigns. And that's probably going to last until June, July. And I think July 4th is when my manager and I have planned for my first major rally. I'm going to be reading the Declaration of Independence. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
All right.
Nice.
And how about Harry?
What is it? What question again? Sorry.
Do you want to say goodbye to everyone and give your, some way to contact you on social media?
Oh, yes. Sorry. Spaced out for a moment. Yeah, my name is Harry Hirsch. I am on Twitter as reenter username. Yeah, so you can contact me there. You can also contact me on Facebook. My name is Harry Hirsch. Yeah. Nice seeing you guys.
Sorry, I forgot to drop my Twitter as well. Sheridan is at Lund2022 for my official campaign.
All right. I don't know if anybody has taught our new friends to do their credits on the live stream chat. So I made if you go to the live stream chat channel on our Discord right now, you can follow my example there. @credit. !credit, and then put your name and any social media places that you would like people to find you at. Okay. Temporarily spaced on your name for a minute, Kingdom Hearts.
Lucas.
Do you,
Lucas.
Lucas. I knew this, but my brain is not actively participating with me when I want it to work. Lucas, do you want to let people know how to find you?
Yes, you can find me on Instagram at lucasgabriel86 or on Facebook, but I don't use Facebook as much.
Okay, well, feel free to provide that into the live stream chat, and hopefully Shale will be able to use it to provide descriptions of our videos.
Oh, can I just say
and
one more
the
thing
podcast.
to everyone
Yeah.
who, if they're watching from Louisiana, don't forget to vote early today for the 2nd and 5th Congressional District. Voting early is from March 6th to March 16th.
All right. Kaizen just showed up for the goodbyes. Kai, do you want to say goodbye to everyone with us?
Oh, sure, absolutely. So I'm Kaizen KC. You can find me on Twitter, Patreon, Cash App, and PayPal. That's at KAIZENKC. So I love everybody, and let's make UBI a reality.
And happy belated birthday
Amen.
to you, because
Thank
I know
you.
yesterday was your birthday, correct?
It was. And let's do a shout out happy birthday to our friend Faye Doney at TISDONEY on Twitter, because her birthday is also either today or I think it's today.
Oh, happy
Yeah,
birthday,
this week.
Faye.
I forget the exact day. But yeah, I know that she can also use a little financial support. So if you guys want to go to her Patreon, I think it's also at Tisdoni or one
You
of
can
the
find her at Linktree, and
at
then you can
Linktree.
get to all of. So that's
Okay, very good.
LINKTR.E Tisdoni.
Very good. And it would really make her day and allow her to continue on her adventure to bring all of her projects to fruition. Okay,
Yeah.
so I think I got to everybody. Shale, I think you're ready to.
Thank you, Faye. It's nice to have you back to do these goodbyes. My name's Shale. My Twitter is Shale Riley, which is also my name. SHAELRILEY. That's the best place to get in contact with me. If you want to be on our programs, if you want to talk with us and join our Discord, just follow me and at me, and I'll message you and we'll talk and you come on the show. And yeah, the Basic Income Town Hall is the thing I'm doing with Sheridan and Yanni, actually, or Yanni. Why am I blank? It's Yanni, right?
Yenny.
That's it. I don't know why. Anyway.
Yeah, no. Very excited for Yenny.
Yeah, we've been talking. We've been all talking about doing it, and we want to do another. I'm going to do another show. It's a very different format. We're going to have just directly connecting constituents to candidates who are basic income candidates, connecting to their future constituents, and yep.
Yeah, we've taken a little break from scheduling people recently, but we are going to have a few more guests coming in very soon. Already speaking with Sass, who wants to come into the YGRT to talk about his run for as a UBI candidate in Austin, Texas. So looking forward to sharing a lot of new people with everybody.
Yeah, excellent. And yeah, anyone, if you would like to schedule your own event in this, please use this virtual space. I don't have to give you permission. Just go to the schedule channel. We can do more stuff with this space. So this has been a long outro. So I'm going to close the stream. Thank you for participating. Thank you for listening. Goodbye. We'll be back tomorrow with a late show, 4 to 6 Eastern, for kind of more our West Coast and Central Time friends who 2 to 4 Eastern might be a little bit too early for. So 4 to 6 Eastern tomorrow, open discussion. Hope to see you there. Goodbye. Thank you again. We love you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.